There's a famous photograph of Marilyn Monroe sitting beside Ella Fitzgerald in a Los Angeles nightclub. Ella is smiling. Marilyn is dressed in black, with a fur coat resting over her shoulder. They're close enough to speak over the music, and the picture has been shared for years as proof of one of old Hollywood's most touching stories. Marilyn helped Ella get booked at the Mocambo, then sat in the front row while Ella performed. But that photograph wasn't taken at the Mocambo. The original press caption identifies the location as the Tiffany Club, where Marilyn attended Ella's performance on November 18, 1954. Ella's Mocambo engagement came 4 months later, in March 1955. And there's another problem. Records from that March place Marilyn in New York, not Los Angeles. She was photographed there before and during the period when Ella was performing at the Mocambo. So why did Ella later say, "I owe Marilyn Monroe a real debt"? Because Ella said Marilyn personally contacted the Mocambo's owner and pushed him to book her. Marilyn reportedly offered something the club understood immediately. If Ella performed there, Marilyn's presence would bring reporters and publicity. The photograph, the phone call, and the Mocambo engagement have slowly been folded into one perfect Hollywood night. But they weren't one night, and the real story isn't about Marilyn discovering Ella or creating her career. It's about one famous woman recognizing another woman's talent and using the power attached to her own name to help open a door that should never have been closed. Before we step into the phone call that connected these two women, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Here, we look beyond the famous photographs and familiar headlines to find the quieter choices that reveal who Marilyn really was. And in this story, one small act of support tells us far more about her than any studio portrait ever could. Now let's return to the moment before the Mocambo booking, when Ella Fitzgerald already had the voice, the career, and the respect, but still needed one powerful door to open. There's no photograph of Marilyn making that call. No reporter recorded the conversation. No transcript tells us her exact words, and no reliable account places us inside the room with her. That's worth saying clearly, because stories about Marilyn have often been retold with private details nobody could truly know. This one doesn't need invented dialogue or a staged scene. What we do have is Ella Fitzgerald's own recollection. Years later, Ella said Marilyn personally contacted Charlie Morrison, the owner of the Mocambo, and asked him to book her. According to Ella, Marilyn offered to sit at a front table, knowing that photographers and reporters would follow. It was a practical offer. Marilyn knew what happened when she entered a nightclub. Camera flashes followed. Gossip columns noticed. A private dinner could become national news by morning. Most of the time, other people controlled that attention. Studios used it to sell films. Magazines used it to sell copies. Photographers used it to build careers of their own. Club owners benefited whenever Marilyn's name appeared beside theirs. But this time, Marilyn seems to have understood that the attention surrounding her could be pointed somewhere else. Toward Ella. At first, that may sound like one celebrity doing another a favor. But Ella didn't need Marilyn to tell the world she could sing. The world already knew. The real question is why a woman with Ella's record, experience, and reputation still needed help getting into one fashionable room on the Sunset Strip. By the end of this story, Marilyn's telephone call will mean something different. It won't be the story of Marilyn creating Ella's career. Ella had built that career through years of hard work. It won't be the story of one glamorous evening defeating discrimination across Hollywood. And it won't be the perfect scene suggested by the famous photograph. It'll be the story of two women holding two very different kinds of power. Ella could command a room with her voice. Marilyn could make the world look toward it. Ella's story had begun 2 decades earlier. In November 1934, 17-year-old Ella Fitzgerald walked onto the stage at Harlem's Apollo Theater during amateur night. She'd planned to dance. Then she saw the Edwards sisters perform, and knew she couldn't follow them with the routine she'd prepared. So she changed course. She sang. The crowd responded, and that night gave Ella a glimpse of where she belonged. It didn't hand her an easy career. Nothing about the years that followed was easy. But it opened the first real door. Soon, she was singing with Chick Webb's orchestra at Harlem's Savoy Ballroom. In 1938, Ella recorded A Tisket, a Tasket, a song adapted from a nursery rhyme. It sold about 1 million copies, reached #1, and stayed on the charts for months. She was 21. By the time Marilyn became involved in 1955, Ella had already recorded hundreds of songs, toured widely, appeared on radio, led Chick Webb's orchestra after his death, and earned the respect of many leading musicians. She wasn't waiting for fame, she already had it. That's the first major correction this story requires. Later retellings sometimes make Ella sound like an unknown singer standing outside the Mocambo until Marilyn rescued her. But Ella had spent roughly 20 years building a professional career. Her challenge wasn't talent, it was access. American entertainment could celebrate a black artist in one room and still block her from another. A hit record didn't guarantee a booking at a fashionable Hollywood club. Respect from musicians didn't erase the racial prejudice, image standards, and private decisions shaping the business. Ella also didn't fit the narrow idea of glamour some club owners wanted. She was shy away from the stage. She wasn't known for flashy entrances or dramatic costumes. Her power arrived when the music began. And that was part of the problem. The Mocambo didn't sell music alone. It sold a picture of Hollywood. Movie stars at polished tables, famous names near the stage, reporters close enough to notice who was sitting with whom. Ella had the voice. The club wanted a certain image. That difference placed her talent at the mercy of men who controlled the room. Marilyn's connection to Ella didn't begin with the Mocambo. It began with admiration. On November 18, 1954, Marilyn attended Ella's performance at the Tiffany Club in Los Angeles. That's where the famous photograph was taken. The timing matters. Marilyn had recently undergone surgery. Her separation from Joe DiMaggio had become public. Reporters watched her closely, looking for signs of how she was handling the collapse of a marriage that had lasted less than a year. When she appeared at the Tiffany Club, the cameras noticed, but Marilyn hadn't gone there to become the evening's main attraction. She'd gone to hear Ella sing. We shouldn't pretend we know exactly what Marilyn felt while she listened. We can't say she planned the Mocambo call that same night. The evidence doesn't allow it. But the photograph establishes something important. Marilyn showed up, she listened. And before she ever used her name on Ella's behalf, she already admired the work. That matters because it changes the nature of the favor. Marilyn wasn't recommending someone she barely knew because a publicist had asked her to. She'd heard Ella. She understood what the club was overlooking. And somewhere between that November night and March 1955, admiration became action. There was another person working steadily behind Ella, Norman Granz. Granz had become Ella's sole manager in 1954. He was known for challenging segregated venues and demanding equal treatment for the musicians he represented. His work didn't depend on one phone call. He was building Ella's long-term position through concerts, tours, contracts, and stronger bookings. Marilyn's intervention was one important push inside a much larger professional effort. That distinction protects both women. It stops Marilyn from being turned into a magical rescuer. And it stops Ella from being reduced to someone who succeeded only because a white movie star noticed her. Ella had built the talent. Granz was building the strategy. Marilyn supplied leverage at the right moment, and the room that needed that leverage was the Mocambo. The Mocambo opened on the Sunset Strip in 1941. It wasn't just another nightclub. Its interior was theatrical, filled with tropical decoration, glass cages, and live birds. Its tables attracted movie stars, agents, studio figures, wealthy customers, and columnists who could turn one successful engagement into several more. To perform there was to be displayed before Hollywood. That's why Ella's absence from its schedule mattered. A popular version of the story claims the Mocambo had never booked a black performer before Marilyn stepped in. That isn't accurate. Black entertainers had appeared there before Ella, including Lena Horne, Eartha Kitt, Dorothy Dandridge, and others. But that fact doesn't erase the racial barriers surrounding the club or the wider entertainment industry. A venue could book selected black stars and still operate inside a deeply unequal culture. Black performers could be welcomed on stage, while black customers faced different treatment. So we have to be precise. Ella wasn't the first black performer at the Mocambo, and we can't prove one single reason the owner had hesitated to book her. Later accounts have pointed to race, appearance, body size, stage style, and whether management believed she fit the club's glamorous image. What we can say is simpler. Ella had the career. The booking still hadn't happened. Then Marilyn called. According to Ella, Marilyn told Charlie Morrison she wanted Ella hired. She offered to sit at a front table, knowing the press would follow. Morrison agreed. Now the phone call takes on a deeper meaning. Marilyn was offering to use the machinery built around her own image. The cameras, the headlines, the public hunger for every detail of her life. Hollywood often treated Marilyn as though her greatest value was being looked at. Yet here she was, using that attention to support a woman whose value had to be heard. She wasn't asking the club to pretend Ella was talented. She was asking it to stop ignoring talent that had already been proven. The booking was arranged for March 1955. The perfect Hollywood ending seemed ready. Ella would sing. Marilyn would sit at the best table. The cameras would flash. And one star would publicly stand behind another. But the historical record places Marilyn somewhere else. Ella opened at the Mocambo on March 15, 1955. The club drew an impressive crowd. Entertainment figures came to hear her, and the engagement quickly became a success. But Marilyn wasn't listed among the guests. That alone wouldn't settle the matter. A newspaper could miss a name. The stronger evidence comes from Marilyn's movements. By then, she was living in New York and trying to gain greater control over her career. She'd broken from the conditions being offered by 20th Century Fox and announced Marilyn Monroe Productions. On March 14th, the night before Ella's opening, Marilyn was photographed in New York with Truman Capote at El Morocco. On March 17th, while Ella's Mocambo engagement was underway in Los Angeles, Marilyn attended a benefit at New York's Hotel Astor. Other reports continued to place her in New York during that period. So the claim that Marilyn sat at the Mocambo every night doesn't fit the documented timeline. And the famous photograph can't fill the gap, because it came from the Tiffany Club 4 months earlier. Does that mean the whole story was false? No. Ella's first-hand account still matters. She said Marilyn called. The club booked her, and Marilyn's offer of publicity may have done its work before opening night ever arrived. This is where memory and documentation have to be handled carefully. Ella remembered Marilyn's support. She remembered the promise of a front table. She remembered the booking that followed. Over time, the Tiffany Club visit, Marilyn's offer, and the Mocambo engagement may have blended into one complete scene. Human memory often holds on to meaning more tightly than dates. The detail of Marilyn attending every night appears to be wrong. The act of support doesn't disappear with it. And once Ella walked onto the stage, Marilyn's location stopped being the most important fact in the story. From that moment on, everything depended on Ella. Ella didn't merely complete the engagement. She filled the room. The shows drew strong crowds. The booking was extended to 3 weeks, and Ella later returned to the Mocambo again. That success answered every doubt management had carried before hiring her. Could she attract the club's fashionable audience? Yes. Could she hold a room filled with stars, agents, and reporters? Yes. Could a singer who didn't fit the club's narrow idea of glamour produce real business? Again, yes. Marilyn's name may have helped secure the first booking, but Marilyn couldn't make people return. She couldn't create Ella's timing, tone, warmth, or control. She couldn't turn a song into something light, playful, and exact. That belonged entirely to Ella. This is where the clean Hollywood legend becomes unfair. The popular version says Marilyn made Ella a star. The more accurate version is stronger. Marilyn helped an established star get access to a room that had underestimated her. Within a month, Norman Granz secured another prestigious engagement for Ella at the Venetian Room in San Francisco's Fairmont Hotel. The Mocambo's success had become evidence. Ella could fill elite rooms. She could win over audiences who'd been told she didn't fit. And she could do it without changing the voice or personality that had already carried her through 2 decades of work. The lesson wasn't that Ella had suddenly become worthy. The gatekeepers had finally been proven wrong. For decades, the famous photograph made everything feel settled. There was Marilyn beside Ella. There was Ella's memory of Marilyn sitting in front. There was the successful Mocambo engagement. Put those pieces together, and they formed one flawless Hollywood night. But photographs can't tell us what happened outside their borders. The Tiffany picture proves Marilyn went to hear Ella in November 1954. It doesn't prove she attended the Mocambo 4 months later. Memory doesn't always preserve life like a newspaper archive. It doesn't place every event under the correct date. It keeps what felt important. Ella remembered that Marilyn cared. She remembered the call. She remembered the promise of publicity. And she remembered the Mocambo finally offering her a stage. Years later, those events may have settled together into one complete memory. One generous movie star in the front row. One door opening. The photograph seemed to confirm it, even though it came from another club and another month. But the emotional center of Ella's account doesn't depend on Marilyn occupying that chair. Someone with enormous influence had spoken for her when an important venue was hesitating. Ella never forgot it. While Ella was proving herself in Los Angeles, Marilyn was fighting her own battle in New York. The situations weren't the same. Ella faced racial barriers Marilyn didn't face. Marilyn's whiteness and celebrity gave her access that many black performers were denied. But both women understood what it meant to have powerful men decide what kind of value they were allowed to possess. Hollywood looked at Marilyn and saw an image it could sell. Some club owners looked at Ella and questioned whether she matched the image their rooms wanted to sell. Marilyn was trying to show that she was more than the roles Fox kept offering her. Ella was proving she didn't need to fit someone else's idea of glamour to command a prestigious stage. We can't claim Marilyn made the call because she saw their struggles as connected. There's no evidence for that private thought, but the parallel is hard to miss. Marilyn knew how it felt to be underestimated while being famous. And in this one case, she used the fame that often trapped her to help another woman push through a different kind of barrier. That's what makes the act meaningful. Not that Marilyn solved the system. She didn't. Not that she created Ella's career. She didn't. She recognized a wrong decision and used the tool she had: attention. And years later, Ella made sure people knew it. Ella's own words remain the strongest evidence in this story. "I owe Marilyn Monroe a real debt," she later said. Ella recalled that Marilyn had called the Mocambo's owner, asked him to book her, and offered to sit at a front table so the press would come. Ella also remembered Marilyn being there during the engagement. That part conflicts with the documented timeline. But her gratitude doesn't have to be dismissed because one detail shifted. The call came from Ella's first-hand account. The booking happened, the engagement succeeded, and Marilyn had already attended Ella's show at the Tiffany Club, proving that her admiration was real before the Mocambo story took shape. The famous photograph now finds its proper place. It wasn't taken at the Mocambo. It didn't capture the night Marilyn's promise was fulfilled. It captured something earlier and quieter. Marilyn listening. That may be why the image became attached to the later story so easily. It gave people a visible scene for an important action that had left no photograph. A phone call can't be framed on a wall. Two famous women at a nightclub table can. Over time, the picture, the promise, and the successful booking became one memory. But correcting the caption doesn't reduce the photograph. It gives it a better meaning. Marilyn wasn't posing as Ella's rescuer. She was there as a fan, and when the chance came to use her influence, she was speaking for a performer she had already chosen to hear. It would be easy to end with the sold-out Mocambo run. The call was made, the door opened, Ella succeeded. But one booking didn't remove the barriers around her. Norman Granz continued fighting segregated seating and unequal treatment at venues. Later in 1955, during a Jazz at the Philharmonic stop in Houston, Ella, Dizzy Gillespie, and others were arrested after police entered Ella's dressing room. Ella later recalled that after taking them to the station, an officer asked for an autograph. That contradiction says more than any neat ending could. Fame could make Ella admired. It couldn't always protect her from humiliation. Marilyn's intervention mattered because power wasn't shared fairly. A white movie star could make a call that carried immediate commercial pressure. Ella's years of work should already have carried that weight on their own. That should make us grateful for Marilyn's action. It should also make us uncomfortable that it was needed. Marilyn wasn't leading a national campaign, and one nightclub booking doesn't turn her into a major civil rights figure. What she did was specific. She saw an artist she admired facing a professional barrier. She had influence. She used it. That's enough. The call wasn't the beginning of Ella Fitzgerald's career. It didn't make her talented. It didn't make her famous overnight. It didn't make her the first black performer at the Mocambo. And it didn't place Marilyn at a front table during an engagement she appears not to have attended. The truth is quieter. Marilyn recognized Ella's ability. She understood that the Mocambo's hesitation wasn't a fair measure of Ella's value, and she offered to use the attention attached to her own image as leverage. For years, Hollywood had used Marilyn Monroe to make people look. On this occasion, she used that power to ask them to listen. Marilyn's name helped the call get answered. Ella's voice made the answer impossible to take back. So let's return to the Tiffany Club. November 18, 1954. Ella Fitzgerald is the performer. Marilyn Monroe is in the audience. The cameras find Marilyn, as they always did. But she hasn't come to become the center of the night. She's come to hear Ella. In the surviving photograph, neither woman knows what the image will later be asked to prove. Ella doesn't know people will attach it to a different nightclub and a different date. Marilyn doesn't know a private act of support will become one of the most repeated stories about her character. There's no need to turn either woman into a symbol. Ella is an accomplished singer, receiving the attention her performance has earned. Marilyn is a fan, sitting close enough to tell her so. A few months later, one woman will use her celebrity to help open a door. The other will walk through it and prove the door should have been open all along. The world remembered Marilyn's face. It remembered Ella's voice. But in that photograph, before the legend settled over them, there were simply two women who recognized something valuable in each other. Stories about Marilyn Monroe often focus on the people who wanted something from her. Studios wanted photographs. Reporters wanted headlines. Audiences wanted the blonde image to keep smiling. This story gives us something different. A moment when Marilyn understood what her fame could do, and used it for someone she admired. Not exactly as the legend later told it, but meaningfully. And Ella Fitzgerald never forgot it. If this story helped you see Marilyn beyond the familiar photographs, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Here, we tell the true stories behind Marilyn's meetings, choices, and private acts of courage, without letting gossip replace the woman herself. And in the comments, tell us which Ella Fitzgerald song you still return to, or which Marilyn moment first made you realize there was more behind the image Hollywood sold. Because sometimes the most revealing thing a star ever did wasn't captured by a camera. Sometimes it was a phone call made for someone else.